As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a podcaster.
Welcome to another edition of We Need to Talk About Movies, brought to you by banterflix.com. And now, here's your host, Jim McLean.
That's about as much Italian-American as you're going to get out of me during this podcast.
Thank goodness.
Hello, I'm Jim McLean. Welcome to this very special edition of the Banterflix Cinecast as we look back at a film that's argued to be Martin Scorsese's third masterpiece. A film that kicked off the 90s. It is, of course, Goodfellas. Now, on this week's show, I'm joined by three wise guys who definitely won't squeal. I'm joined by James Mahon from the Pop-Up Film Club.
Thanks.
I'm joined by Neil Sedgewick.
Hello.
And Jack McFadden.
Hello, folks.
Guys, just before the show, I went online and I've given you all, I forget what the name of the exact website is, but I've given you all, for the rest of the show, your mobster names. And I'm quite impressed with this. So I'll start with you, Neil. You are Neil Sedgwick and you are Claudio the Bookie. I don't know why. Okay. I don't know. I just typed them in. Jack, you are now known as Fast Silvio Bruno. James Mahon is Sly Roberto Santero.
Oh, nice.
And I'm actually freaked out by mine. Mine is Alphonse the Pimp. So, I don't know.
Judging by that accent at the start, that is completely
that could be that definitely could be. But we will move on, gentlemen, and get stuck into the show. Okay, so we'll start off with Goodfellas. As I said there at the start of the show, it was released in 1990 with the tagline, "Murderers come with smiles." It's a really weird tagline for me, but that is what, of course, they signed off on. Gents, before we start talking about Scorsese's other mobster films and other mobster films in general, we'll start talking about Goodfellas. And whoever wants to fire away first.
You know this question that we always get asked, what is your favourite film?
Okay.
And it's a question that I don't really like to answer because I think that can shift and stuff,
yeah.
But this is one of my answers.
It's in the list.
It's in the list. It's one of the great films, not just a mob film, but for me, one of the great films out there, certainly the last 25 years. And I love it to bits. I first saw it Saturday afternoon. Mum and Dad went out and I had a video. My dad had a video of it, old VHS, taped off Channel 4, pencil Goodfellas on the label. And I stuck this in, not knowing what it was. And they closed the trunk at the start. And I was like, I am in. All the way, wherever this goes, I am in. And it just took off from there and I adore it.
Okay. Jack, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much the same. I love Goodfellas. Although I would take issue with your intro. I think it's Martin Scorsese's fourth masterpiece.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, that's an aside. But I think it's fabulous. I think it's one of Scorsese's most accomplished works just because of how well it's written, how well it's directed as well, and how just incredibly entertaining it is. Mm-hmm. And every single aspect of it, it's an incredible achievement on practically every artistic level you can think of in cinema. The editing is fantastic by Thelma Schoonmaker. Yeah. The dialogue is amazing. Just everything about it, it's just a fantastic watch. Yeah. And often with the classics, you kind of think, it's one you need to watch to get an idea of like if it was groundbreaking, things like that. But this is something when someone tells you to watch it, you could happily watch it and watch it over and over and over again. So,
Oh, totally. It is one of those films, we talked about this before with Jurassic Park, and I know I'm not comparing the two. If I find it on TV and you're flicking through the channel, and no matter what stage it is in the film, I'll always end up sitting watching Goodfellas as well. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Same with Jurassic Park, even if it's like pretty much near at the end, you go, okay, I'll see it to the end. James, what about you? What do you think of Goodfellas?
Oh, adore it. I think it was the first Scorsese film I actually had the pleasure of watching, and it's maybe as big. I mean, there's so much room for argument within that. Never mind. The best movie of all time. Is it his best? Is probably another argument that you could spend hours on. The story itself, going from this kid outside, sort of the traditional roots and growing up idolizing these wise guys, it's a really nice journey, and it's sort of like a lot of Scorsese ones, a movie of two two halves starting, and there's the downfall nearly, which is
it is like it's got one of the best opening lines in the film. It's from my terrible impersonation and slight changing of the wording there, but like I love that line. As far as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. I love that line, and this is something. Just because I was talking to someone before the show about this, do you think this is a film that really, in a way, like kind of glamorizes the mafia? I don't think it does, but I know there's other people like we'll come on to this later between the Godfather and Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Do you think this film glamorizes the mafia? You've got that opening line, but then you have to remember what the rest of the film, what everything else is, how it unfolds.
There's a point, I watched a little documentary making of today before we came down, and there's a point, somebody pointed out that the point at which Spider gets shot in the bar is the turning point for the film.
Yeah.
Because up until then, you're on that journey and you want them to become the mobster, you want the postman to go in the oven, you want all those things to happen. And then when he gets shot in the foot, everybody just kind of goes, ooh, these are unstable individuals we're dealing with here. These aren't these wise cracking, hey, I'm going to pop you in a burp. It's not all that. There's a really nasty dark side to these guys as well, and that's when that kind of descent starts.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think this is a criticism you hear a lot of Goodfellas, but I think it's absolutely untrue because
I would agree.
For certain things, exactly what Neil said, but I would even argue it happens before that. I think one of the most important parts of Goodfellas is, and it's a testament to Scorsese's direction as well, it's the scene in which Henry beats up one of Karen's neighbours.
Yeah.
And Karen says that it turns her on.
Yeah, something I was going to come to later on.
The way that it's shot, though, is completely different. Because up until then, Schoonmaker, again, has been jump cutting and editing and flashbulb editing and all these really fancy dance stuff that makes it look as if it's such a glamorous thing. Because that's what it does. The first half of it maybe sets up, it looks amazing. The second half of it shows how it's a nightmare. But the way that Henry beats him up, the camera is completely still and the camera is static. But the important thing is that there's two other guys in the frame and they react with absolute, they're absolutely appalled by what they see, and they represent what the audience. I mean, anybody with a shred of empathy would react that way, and that's how we, the audience, suddenly it doesn't seem glamorous anymore. It just seems messy and brutal and violent, and that's the point at which we think, you know what, this is quite horrible, and it just gets worse and worse and worse from there.
I would agree. Like, I'm trying to, because I can't remember exactly the chronological order of the film, but I know that the infamous scene is, of course, I'm funny how I'm usually all that, but I can't remember if that sequence is after or before that, but everyone talks about that one sequence on its own, but the moment you realise Joe Pesci is completely unhinged, it's just after that little bit has played out, and you've got the manager of the bar coming over and asking to settle his bill, and he just goes
crazy.
He just goes absolutely, just goes crazy, and you're like kind of going, you don't want to mess with Joe Pesci. Yeah, and then there's a sequence where they're burning down the bar, and they're having this chat. And it's one of the things, I don't know if we touched on this, I love the dialogue in Goodfellas. It's so organic, and I kind of believe that when Karen says that line, it kind of turned me on. You kind of go, you would kind of get that. But it's Joe Pesci and Ray Liotta are chatting, and Joe Pesci's kind of going, his character's kind of going, she doesn't want to go out with me because I'm Italian. Doesn't want to go out because she's a Jew. Pardon the line, but this is what's said. And you're kind of reading through this, and she's kind of going, she's prejudiced against Italians. You're like kind of going, I don't think so. I think it's just pretty much you, Joe Pesci. I don't think she wants to go out with you on her own.
Yeah, but that's exactly the film. The film depicts them as incredibly deluded people, and they just live in this bubble. And that's why I think Goodfellas is so clever, because the title Goodfellas is completely ironic, because they use it, the actual phrase, all the time in the movie. People are referred to as Goodfellas, and it's a term of endearment. It's like a slap on the back for these guys. But then you look at scenes like this, you think, it's all so funny, isn't it, guys? It's the mafia so funny. It's just horrible.
It's a film I think you appreciate more when you get older. I think when you watch it when you're young, I think you do kind of find stuff funny, and you kind of maybe find that Joe Pesci sequence really funny.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you realize, no, that's actually terrifying. This is I would not want to be stuck in a bar opposite or put in that situation with Joe Pesci. Your skin crawls. And you kind of go, Ray Liotta's kind of laughing it off, and you're kind of going, no, I don't think so. But in terms of talking about dialogue, and there's a lot of memorable sequences in this film. Any other standout for you guys?
Oh, the Copacabana shot.
Yeah.
I know it's really lavish and ostentatious, but I think it's very deliberate, because it shows you how enticing this world looks.
Yeah.
And look, he gets to skip the queue. He gets to go through all the little intricate, pathways, and everyone's smiling, and everyone's handing him, and everyone's opening doors and things like that. And Karen's got a big smile on her face, and Henry looks like the bee's knees. But there's something else going on.
Do you want to know, like, that whole sequence came out completely by accident. They were refused entry into the club. So they had to basically, on spec, just basically come up with something, and they created this wonderful Steadicam sequence. My favourite bit in that whole sequence when they're walking through... Now, we touched about this last week with the Tom Cruise show. We talked about this in Magnolia. There's a similar type of sequence in that. But I just love, in that sequence in the club, whenever she comes right to the end, and she just kind of turns to... Karen kind of turns to Henry and kind of goes, "What do you do again?" And you're just... Because everyone's just kind of like... and I just love... Like, it's weird.
He mishears her as well. He deliberately goes, "Sorry, what?"
Yeah, and it's like, "I'm in construction." You're like, "Really?" It's like... and it's just other sequence like that, because the women in Goodfellas are really important, because they're not really damsels in distress. Karen is not a damsel in distress. She is not living in cuckoo land. She's not completely oblivious to what her husband's doing. Like, especially in the film's final act, she is part of the whole thing. She's in with, because there's a sequence where she kind of goes, I need a line where they're like going from the helicopter, and they're doing the guns delivery, and I think she kind of goes in and goes, "Give me a snort of coke," and you're like, she knows exactly what she's in for. And I think it's one of the best things about this film. It's really... And I think Karen's sometimes overlooked in Goodfellas. People always talk about Robert De Niro, and they always talk about Joe Pesci. But Lorraine Bracco, I think, is a fantastic actress, and she just gives she's a really important part of Goodfellas. I love that sequence where she kind of confronts the mistress. It's like she kind of ringing on everybody else's door. Yeah. Like, there's a whore. There's a whore. I can't remember the house number.
Every button, yeah.
But maybe is that just me, or I can't think of it.
I agree with that. Yeah. Especially also that scene where why I find her character really interesting is because at the very start she really dislikes Henry on the date, that Henry is just an absolute asshole to her, and then she comes back. She drives to where he wanted to be the whole time and actually gives it to him, and then suddenly he thinks, "Oh, there's more to this girl than I thought." But it's all about that the whole thing of hating this guy to begin with, but then slowly coming around to that lifestyle and then being dependent on that lifestyle. That's maybe a message that a lot of people don't necessarily like, because it's very true. But Scorsese just hits it on the head, I think. Yeah.
And then another thing, talk about Karen, I love is the wedding scene. The wedding scene is like everybody's like, it's like cousin, second cousin. And you just get, you literally, it's the one time I do think you see her as kind of being like this person who's kind of letting her, it's when she kind of like, everything washes over and she's kind of like swept away by all the money, because everyone's just coming up giving her envelopes, and it's like, I love that scene with Paul. It's like, is my second cousin, like little Paulie, and everybody's kind of called Paulie, and this or Paulie that. Little. And I just love it. Then it kind of cuts to her and she's kind of twirling round. I think they're dancing, and it just kind of like, you still kind of got there. It's got the money going round. You're like, I love that scene. I love the wedding scene in that. Any guys, Neil, James, what about yourselves? Any other scenes you want to talk about?
God, I love the scene in the diner. Yeah, isn't it? Towards the end, where it's really things are starting to sort of come to a head. Yeah, and you have transformed from, like you said, everyone getting these handouts, and you really start to see what it is, maybe a wee bit more to sort of run the risks, and this is him really losing everything that he's sort of done, and the relationships that he did have and had built up, and obviously with Joe Pesci earlier, believing that he's been a made man and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it sort of comes to a head towards the end. It just builds to a really sort of nice comeuppance, and it's.
Yeah, Joe Pesci I don't think there's anybody watching this film where he just go, Joe Pesci doesn't get what he deserves in this film. He's just he's just a nasty, nasty man. And like, I love the fact that there's that scene where he kind of, when he takes out the other maid guy whose name has went out of my head. But I mean, he it's the one time you kind of see his ego being someone willing to take him on and just kind of go bruise his ego. I think because he used to shine shoes when he was younger.
Yeah. Go get your
go shine your shoes, and I think he could spit and polish, whatever they used to order. And I love that scene because he kind of goes away and then he just kind of come back completely out of the blue.
I love the scene after that as well, where they visit his mother's house.
Yeah, and that is, of course, is Martin Scorsese's mom.
Exactly, yeah, it is. It's
Catherine Both Scorsese. His mother and father in this film. I think his character's only Vinny. I don't know if he's ever on screen, but they talk to him on the phone. It's Martin Scorsese's dad as well.
There you go.
But
I like that scene as well because it kind of shows you a completely different angle from what you've been showing.
Yeah.
Seeing Joe Pesci, here's his mother who genuinely loves him and genuinely cares for him.
Mm-hmm.
And that moment where he's actually killed at the end, then it talks about how his mother couldn't even give him an open casket funeral. And then you kind of, even he's an absolute monster, you kind of feel sorry for him and his, not even a bit. You have no empathy for him. Even for his mother.
No.
No,
Not even for his mother.
I can't.
The poor woman.
I really, really don't. Another thing I've discussed with people over this year, because we talked about this idea of glamorizing the mobsters and glamorizing the mafia. At the end, like, Henry Hill doesn't really make a conscious decision. He doesn't become a good guy. Like, he doesn't make this. He doesn't decide. He at no point, at any point, does he really kind of go, I've done wrong. He just kind of, it's basically the only reason why he's back, he's going to the police and ratting everybody else out is because he's got no options left.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not like this guy, you kind of go, he's not like kind of going, oh, he's seen the error of his ways. He's a bad guy, but he's got a good heart. No, he's just doing what he can to survive.
That's quite a thing with Martin Scorsese, though. He doesn't, lead characters are not really.
Yeah.
What is
upstanding citizens,
upstanding citizens,
members of the
community. They don't have this big moment of redemption in a lot of. I mean, even on his current work, or I say current work, but his sort of latest works, they don't. If you look at Wolf of Wall Street,
I mean, Scorsese's films are really interesting because redemption is a theme that is in almost every single one of them.
Yeah.
But it's a really strange form of redemption. Like in Taxi Driver, it's redemption, but a really twisted, perverted one. And Raging Bull as well, he is redeemed at the end, but it's, again, he's a completely broken man. But in this one, in Goodfellas, I think it might be my favorite aspect of the film because the whole movie is that kind of a film you would completely understand and expect it to turn out that, actually, you know what? I've been a horrible person this whole time because of the life we've led. But he doesn't give it to you because people like that in the real world actually don't. It's the exact same thing with bankers today. Yeah. And that's why I think there's a lot of parallels with Wolf of Wall Street because these kind of things, these people who do these horrible things and break people's lives and destroy people's lives, they have the nerve to complain. Henry Hill just says, I order meatballs with marinara sauce and they give me egg noodles and ketchup. And he's complaining, even though he's got a witness protection program, he doesn't go to jail having just did all of those appalling things, rat out all the people he idolized in childhood, and he has the nerve to say, I have to live the rest of my life like a schnook.
Because, of course, the first book was, of course, based on Wise Guys, which is, of course, Henry Hill followed up with Gangsters and Goodfellas. That was his second book, which was out a couple of years ago, and he is completely unredemptive. Like, he complains constantly about this life that he has to live now, and a lot of it's kind of talking about the relationship with De Niro, because De Niro would phone him constantly trying to get information about how the character Jimmy kind of how would he have done this, how would he have said that. And he's like kind of complaining, it's like kind of going, have De Niro on the phone, and you're like kind of going, each to their own, but I mean, this is not someone I think I would want to be stuck with. I don't think I'd want to hang out with Henry Hill. Maybe in the early days if I was going to be a gangster. But one character I love in this film, and I know he's a gangster, is Paulie. I love Paulie in this because, of course, food plays a big important part of the mafia way. And there's this beautiful line at the start. I've written it down here about Paulie. Paulie may have been slow, but that's because Paulie didn't have to move for anybody. And I love that line, and I love the actor that plays him. And it's that sequence again near the end where he kind of comes back, and I forget what it is. It's only a couple of grand that he offers Henry Hill at the end when he kind of comes to him, like begging for everything just because he's. Oh yeah, and he's heartbroken about it as well. And Paulie just kind of gives him like a couple of grand. It's like, that's all you're worth to me.
He has that look in that shot you're talking about, the barbecue, where he's just sitting eating and they're doing that voiceover of it, and he just has this death stare of, you kind of go, that big guy, like that big cuddly teddy bear, and you're thinking behind those eyes. That is not. I know. It's a guy you do not want to mess with. The bear's going to tear it to shreds. But he said Paul Sorvino. Sounds right. And he said that he, for a long time beforehand, he couldn't get that character. Right. And he couldn't get the look, and he couldn't get the thing. And he went to Scorsese and said, I can't do this. I can't get there. And on this wee documentary thing, it was like he was going out one night, he was checking his teeth, and he looked in the mirror very quickly and jumped back because all of a sudden it just clicked. And that was when Paulie kind of came to life. But he has this, because it's all the very strong, heavy, thick American-Italian accents, but Paul Sorvino has this lovely kind of, yes, and I told Martin that I couldn't possibly play this, but like when you hear him in real life, it's just a complete cutaway from that voice in the film.
And then, I totally agree, like, I love the sequence where they're in prison. I love the sequence where they're in prison and they're using the razor blade for the garlic. Because food plays a big part of this film as well. So, gentlemen, want to talk a wee bit more about that?
Wasn't there a cookbook made?
Yes.
Wasn't there
a
cookbook done off the back of the film?
Yeah.
About how to make all the great Italian sauces and stuff. I believe it's out there somewhere. Somebody will find that on Amazon and send us a link, I'm sure. But like food's everywhere. It's all barbecues and it's all fresh. It's all, that prison sequence is great because you just imagine everybody else in the prison standing in line going, where are those guys? And they go, they're up there with a couple of lobsters.
We just got some schlop. That's all we've got.
It's very part of the Italian culture. I mean all the scenes in Goodfellas are a lot of them are based around dinner tables and people chatting, whether it's a dinner scene where Tommy goes, "Am I funny?" or where he goes to see his mother. I mean, it's again, she's serving. I love about that is that she's constantly trying to get to eat something. Eat this and eat this. Here, come on, please, come on, take this and stuff like that. Because that's the Italian mother, which I love.
It's a full-blown spread in that sequence as well.
I know,
and it's like the middle of the night.
I'll pop the kettle on. I've got some digestives, a bit of toast. Like it's a full-blown, full table and stuff.
A lot to do with the mafia and that sort of stuff is the family aspect. You're part of the family. And it is sort of that whole sort of culture. And I think what the great thing about Goodfellas is, it's people standing on the outside of that. I mean, Ray Liotta's character Henry can never be a part of the family because he's not Italian. And it's the same with De Niro's James character. They can't be made men. They can't aspire to, and looking around it, and obviously jealousy and everything sort of kicks in the longer it goes. And no, it's that sort of, I think food plays a part in sort of bringing that. And a lot of the best scenes in Goodfellas are the scenes at home. I vaguely remember, I haven't seen it in about a year, which is really unfortunate, but the house scenes of Ray Liotta's, and the parties are fantastic.
I love it when he's like, especially near the end, when they're like, he's worrying about the helicopter, but at the same time he's kind of phoning home to phone his brother.
Yeah,
stir the sauce, don't let the sauce burn. And he's coked out of his mind, and he's still all he can think about is like the cutlets for the meat and this, that, and other. And you're like, kind of go, you have bigger priorities. Before we kind of move on from Goodfellas, we've touched on this, but it's just because I've got it written down here. I know we've mentioned the cinematography, but it's Michael Ballhaus who does the cinematography here, and there's some amazing I love the opening sequence, where it's like kind of like you kind of don't know if these guys. Well, you kind of guess that they're mobsters and they're up to no good, but it's like you hear the bang in the boot, and you're like kind of going, "What's that?" And they open up the boot, and it's, they're all in like bathed in like the red light of the brake light, and they open it up, and it's just the other guy. Then it just goes full on. And then there's a sequence near the end again where they come back to that and they're digging up the body and it's all completely in red.
Yeah, it's very similar to Scorsese loves red. He uses it a lot in Mean Streets as well. Like in the bar scenes, it's like this hellish pit. It's just it's like fiery and it just looks horrible. But you're absolutely right. The cinematography in Goodfellas is class. It's amazing.
Because anytime I see the scenes with the bathed in red, I always kind of think of it's a lesser known Scorsese film and it's slightly underrated, although I haven't seen it in a while, so I'm careful of standing over that statement. Bringing Out the Dead with Nicolas Cage. That's a very nicely shot. It is amazing. There's flaws there, but I mean, I think it's the same cinematographer in that, and there's a lot of that kind of like as they're driving past in the ambulance, there's a lot of like people in red light and caught in that kind of bathed in colour. But I think we've talked about Goodfellas we can still talk about Goodfellas as we go on, but we'll open it out, gentlemen. I want to ask you, because this was the whole point of this podcast where it came out, was chat with a few friends out in a few drinks. Is Goodfellas the definitive gangster movie? And I suppose the other one to compare it with is, we don't have to go into details here, is The Godfather. The Godfather trilogy. You've also got like the likes of Scarface.
We don't call it the trilogy.
The trilogy, there's two. There's two. I'm
going to open establish that right now.
I'm going to, I can't think, you've also got like, there's the other one with De Niro, it's Once Upon a Time in America. There's a lot of other.
And the 1930s ones with James
Mahon. Indeed.
Which, Tommy himself, he's essentially a James Cagney. In the very last shot where he fires a gun just before the credits, that's from The Public Enemy, which I love. It's a nice little Scorsese allusion.
Well, as I'm saying, do you feel Goodfellas is definitive for a gangster movie? Like, do you compare? Like, I mentioned The Godfather there. Do any of you prefer? I personally prefer Goodfellas over The Godfather, personally, because I can watch Goodfellas in a 2.5 hour sitting, and that's me done, dusted. If I watch The Godfather, I genuinely am going to sit and go, I'm going to want to watch Godfather 2 now. Because it was on Sky Movies, did it one night. They had 1, 2, and 3 back to back. And I watched one. I came in maybe at just kind of my favourite scene, actually, with The Godfather, with Marlon Brando in hospital when Pacino goes to visit him.
Yeah.
Came in through there and kind of went, I'm going to watch this. End up watching Godfather 2 and watched a bit of Godfather 3 in a weird parallel universe where it doesn't really exist, but it's there. And it's a long sit to sit through that, which is why I think Goodfellas that's why I prefer Goodfellas. And I think it's definitive because you go on that complete odyssey from 1950s to 1980s with Henry Hill, and it's done and dusted. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think, guys?
I mean, it's tough. You know, they're very close. I would probably say, in my personal opinion, that The Godfather, and to be honest, I couldn't even argue whether Godfather 1 or Godfather 2, you know, between them, because you nearly do take them as a piece. But I love Godfather 1. I'd probably say it over Goodfellas, and like it's a lot of people at the peak of their powers, you know.
Of course, Pacino turned down playing the role of Jimmy because he didn't want to get typecast as a mafia because he'd done it in The Godfather. Do you know what he turned that role down for? He turned it down. I forget the name of the actual villain, but it's the villain in Dick Tracy. He turned it down. I can't remember his name. The name of that character. You're kind of going, terrible choice, because De Niro wasn't the first choice for Jimmy. It was always Pacino.
That's hard to believe.
It's just one of those things you just can't believe when other people are in those roles.
Yeah, hard to believe. Yeah. But I mean, even, you know, it's a different movie from Goodfellas in the sense that it's within the family.
Yeah.
You know, and you see sort of this war hero, you know, is what he's billed as. And you see basically his transformation into, you know, a sort of a dawn, you know. It's a really, really nice journey. And it is done. And I think if they hadn't have made the second one, you know, then your argument maybe wouldn't be the same because
I know,
you know,
it's but again, it's like what I've said before with Terminator 2 and Terminator, like you don't get the Godfather 2 without the Terminator.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll start that whole bit again. You don't get Godfather 2 without the first Godfather.
Certainly.
Godfather 2 is slow. I have to say, I have to be in the mood to watch Godfather 2, but I mean, it is a really rewarding watch, and I love the whole stuff with De Niro in that as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's maybe him at his, but although again, you go into all his Scorsese works, and it's just. But
what about you, Neil? Where do you fall down? Do you like?
It's Goodfellas for me. I am a fan of the Godfather films, but I think we kind of touched on it. I think it takes effort to sit down and watch the Godfather films.
I said it's an effort, but it is undoubtedly,
it's a great story.
It's a rewarding effort, but I can throw on, as I said at the start of the show, I can come in halfway through Goodfellas, I can throw Goodfellas on, I can be just with it. But Godfather, there's a couple of times it's been on, and I've kind of went halfway through it. Kind of going, no, I'll maybe turn it on and come back to it.
Yeah, but the pace of Goodfellas is a big thing. Goodfellas is just such a massive package deal for me, from the acting, the dialogue, the cinematography, even the soundtrack. Man,
but it's one thing I realised we hadn't talked about.
It's all there in that, and the Godfather, while they are great films and there are great performances in there, it's not quite. And some people will be standing screaming, "This is sacrilege!" But it's not the total package for me in terms of what a film can be. It's great. I'm not knocking it in any way, shape, or form. I love it. I'm a big fan of it. The box set proudly sits on my shelf. But the one I will reach for is Goodfellas.
Yeah. It's one thing you mentioned there, and just before I come to you, Jack, is they're two completely, in terms of the soundtrack, they are so different. Like when you think of The Godfather, you can't not think of the theme from The Godfather.
Yeah.
But when I think of Goodfellas, I kind of think of stuff like Rag to Riches. I can't hear that song without thinking of Goodfellas. And you've also got Roses Are Red is one of them as well. I think that's when they're going through the Steadicam sequence, I think, or possibly when they're in the club. I think maybe in the club with the girlfriends. It's more of like I would call like a jukebox soundtrack.
And that music, that scene you're talking about in the wedding where they're spinning round and everything, the music that's there, you can't hear that without thinking of that sequence as well. I can't remember the name of the piece of music.
But what about you, Jack?
I hate this premise of having to choose between the
Godfather. Well, here's the thing: you don't have to choose between them.
I will pick it. I think The Godfather is a better film. Okay. Both 1 and 2. I think they just are. I think it's quite evident they are. But Goodfellas is great. But it's exactly what you're saying, Neil. It's so easy to get caught up in Goodfellas because of the pace. Yeah. Because it's like being on a drug. The whole thing is like a roller coaster. It just goes at such a lightning pace that it does not feel like 2.5 hours, even though it is. Yeah. Which is insane. But The Godfather is completely different in tone, in the way it's. In every aspect, it's completely different. In The Godfather is like the great American novel. Yeah. It's just like it's so heavy, it's so meditative, it's so thematic as well, and every aspect that you could think of it is just an hell of an amazing accomplishment. As well, to expand it over 2 films and to have them not only just complement one another, not only have them just like exceptional works of art, but just that you can't think of one without the other. Yeah. The story ends with Godfather 1, but then it completely doesn't at the same time. It's really strange. I can't think of any other film that I would even compare that to.
Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I mean, like the script of Godfather is fabulous. It's just like again, I'm stuttering. I don't even know how the only other film I can think of in the 70s American film that I think has as good a script is probably Chinatown.
Okay, it is a very good film.
That's that kind of caliber. It's just incredible. The performances are amazing. I mean, Pacino there's nobody in Goodfellas who's as good as Pacino in The Godfather. There's nobody, I don't think, in Goodfellas who's as good as Diane Keaton in both those films.
Diane Keaton's character is very different from Karen. This film. She's she's not complicit. Like, I mean, she is like completely out in the cold. Not in so much in the second Godfather Part 2, but definitely in the first, because I love that scene where she's kind of it's the closing sequence where he has become the Don and the door is shut on her, and that's kind of there's their life and then there's him as the Don.
I mean, that's amazing. That is such a beautiful way to show that cinematically. I think it's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, we were talking about the cinematography in Goodfellas. I mean, The Godfather is one of those films that changed the way people shot movies. Yeah. And you often hear that term thrown around a lot, but this one genuinely did. The dark shadows.
So would Goodfellas as well. Like, I mean, Goodfellas has a lot of things that, like you would kind of think it's kind of. You wouldn't think it's direct. Okay, granted, I have to put it in hindsight. Like Scorsese, when you think of Scorsese now, you always think of the kind of the old Scorsese now. When you picture him, when you look back at like when he's like young, when he looks weirdly. When I look back at young Scorsese, he looks really like my dad. I'm not saying he is my dad, but he has like you can't think of Scorsese with like a black beard or anything like that. Yeah. But I mean, like the way it's like there's a sequence in Goodfellas where like there's the freeze frame. You like not many freeze frame. It's like you're not meant to do that in film editing. Okay, maybe this is more than. But I mean, it's kind of it was seen.
No, I kind of know what you mean, but
it was seen as a film that broke the rules. You've got like a film that switches narrators. You've got a film that has freeze frames and a really overly loud soundtrack. Like I think the soundtrack kind of takes over from the actual dialogue at times. Yeah, maybe that's just me, but I think it's a film. I think Scorsese himself said it. Like Goodfellas themselves broke the rules, so the film had to break the rules, and that's why I think I can see just in the way you're talking about The Godfather having a legacy and an impact on cinema. I definitely think like you can look at Goodfellas the same and say.
See, I'm not entirely sure. I think Goodfellas, the way it's shot is great. It fits the narrative of the film perfectly, but all the aspects of it you can trace back. The soundtrack, for example, you can go back to Mean Streets, which I think is even better. I think that's the way it works thematically with that as well. Yeah. Plus the way I'm talking about freeze frames. The thing about Scorsese and his direction is that he idolizes cinema itself, and he always picks from his favorites, and one of them is Hitchcock. Yeah, there's so much of Goodfellas looks like a Hitchcock film, and the freeze frame and things like that is total Truffaut and new wave stuff and things like that. He amalgamates all these different techniques, and just like every possible cinematic technique you can think of, he just throws it at you to propel you on this story. But with The Godfather, I think it's even more ambitious because it actually takes its time. and it.
Oh no,
decides-
I agree with
But
you.
maybe that's just me.
No, I
It's
agree with you.
amazing
Like,
what I'm saying.
I do not
know.
want to. I don't want to listen.
But I love Goodfellas. I absolutely adore
Oh, it is.
Absolutely adore
It's
it.
it's Sophie's choice.
I know.
It's
it's-
Sophie-
yeah.
it is
When
Sophie's
I was
choice.
asking you before this
Do you like
podcast,
your right hand or your left?
what do
Yeah.
you do?
But it is like there's so many things. I don't want to get sidetracked too much to talk about Goodfellas or The Godfather. But I mean, there's so many things. Like I love that sequence in the hospital with Marlon Brando and Pacino comes to him, and just there's the tear from Brando.
Yeah.
Because when you look at Brando, like when you hear the stories of Brando, like on the island of Dr. Moreau, where he was getting his lines done by radio.
Yeah.
He didn't want to learn a script. With Apocalypse Now, he didn't learn a script. With the score was horribly overweight, and again didn't learn his dialogue. You kind of go, that's the kind of Brando you kind of saw, and you kind of go, this is a Brando actually giving a fantastic performance. But anyway, we're going to open it out. Any other mob films you want to talk about? Like the other one I mentioned there, of course, was Scarface, which often sometimes get talked about, which I'm not a huge fan of. Watched it once or twice, and I think if ever there was a film that did glamorize the mafia and I think Scarface is the film. And all I really remember, there's only it's scenes and moments from Scarface I remember, but I wouldn't say I could remember like start to finish.
I think it's the fact that it's so outlandish, maybe, by comparison to the ones that we were discussing. But again, it's actually a really nice, and I've probably used this term, but it's the American dream.
Yeah.
You know, it's really from start to finish the American dream, and you know what people will do to achieve a higher standing in life. There's some fantastic scenes in Scarface. I wouldn't put it on a level of anything that we're talking about, but I mean, even from the camps that they are in the underpass, you know, right the way up to some of the club scenes, you know, and I'm obviously, you know, Say Hello to My Little Friend is one of the most mocked and reiterated.
I just love, like, in terms of women in these films, Michelle Pfeiffer in that film. Yeah. And again, she's again another very complicated female character within this type of genre. Anything else, guys, you want to talk? Because we'll move on and talk a wee bit about Scorsese's dabbles with the mob. But anything else you want to talk about?
Have you ever seen the original Scarface, the one Howard Hawks made in the 30s?
No.
That's really worth seeing. It's really, I think it's much better than the De Palma one.
Okay.
It's really, really good. It's worth checking out.
Okay. Because I'm trying to think of, before we actually move, I can't think of the last great gangster film. Like, I know it was on the other night, and I have to say I watched it again for the first time in ages. The film that really disappointed me, Michael Mann's Public Enemy. With
with
Johnny
really?
Depp and Christian Bale. I remember kind of going thinking, you've got Michael Mann, Christian Bale,
Marion Cotillard,
Johnny Depp, and you're kind of going,
Yeah.
this should work on paper. This is like three of my favorite things.
You've gone tick,
And
tick,
it's just
tick,
such
and then
a-
you get to the end, you go, oh.
I know,
It's just such an
Doesn't
underwhelming. It's like it's not even an exciting film, and that's something for Michael Mann.
Yeah. No, it's
I can't. Can I just think of any recent really good?
not really good. I mean, you got the one that was built up for over a year before it came out, which was American Gangster, which again, it sort of
That's
feels
Ridley Scott, isn't it?
yeah, and it was, you know, it was Denzel at the height of his sort of powers as well.
Man.
Yeah, maybe it's just one of those things like westerns. Like, I mean, maybe it's just it's people have said that westerns have had their time, but I mean, westerns seem to be increasingly kind of coming back and creeping in. Of course, you've got DiCaprio's kind of pseudo western coming out later this year. I was just a question that came to mind there. So, I don't, Jack, can you think of any?
now that you mention it, I can't really. The only one I can think of.
Blank without going to another Scorsese film.
Yeah.
I can't actually do.
Because the one I
You're
the one
so
I
in
meant-
Scorsese
There
right
was
now.
Ryan
Yeah.
Gosling, and
it
wasn't good.
Oh.
You know, Ryan Gosling and
it was like the Gangster Squad.
Gangster Squad, wasn't it?
Gangster Squad. Yeah.
It wasn't.
No.
But I mean, there was a
that's
film that had a great cast, and you've got because you got Sean Penn, Ryan Gosling, Emma Stone,
Josh
somebody else.
Brolin-
There was another
Brolin-
female.
No.
Josh Brolin, yeah.
Yeah, Brolin.
And
Oh,
it was just kind of. I can't remember who directed that. It was someone you kind of. It was
I
someone.
remember it was no, I can't remember actually. I think it's a name that you would expect more of.
Yeah.
I think. Or-
And I just remember watching it and just kind of going, it's nothing exciting.
there was the French one
Oh,
called Marine.
yes,
The one with
a brilliant
Jacques Marine.
film.
That was
Yes,
actually Public
yes.
Enemy #1. That was
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really good.
yeah.
I think that was off the top of my head. That's the only one I can think of the past maybe 10 years or so.
Well, the reason why I've asked that is because there is, of course, the one film that Scorsese finally won, of course, the Oscar 2006 with the Departed. Very different kind of mobster film. But we'll come back to The Departed in a minute. But of course, Goodfellas, of course, as you mentioned there, Jack, wasn't the first time that Scorsese had dabbled with the mob. You've got Mean Streets. There's other films as well. You've got Gangs of New York and The Departed, as I mentioned. And it is kind of dabbled from what I remember in Raging Bull as well. But who wants to start off in this? Who wants to? Because Mean Street is a film I haven't seen in a long, long time. I was going to try and get it earlier this week on Netflix because it had been added, but it has very quickly been removed as well.
Really?
Yeah, depressingly.
I watched it for the first time probably about a month ago.
Okay.
And thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, it really was. And so much of his work is already there. You know, he's so developed at a really early stage in his career. Like you were saying earlier with the lighting, I mean, there's some great scenes in that. The scene where he takes De Niro away, he plays Johnny Boy. And De Niro plays a character that you don't really get to see De Niro ever really play, which is
like a schmuck.
A schmuck.
To use Scorsese's probably language.
Exactly. You know, which is fantastic. And I mean, Harvey Keitel really just holds the movie and lets De Niro really star. And I think it really is sort of a breakout role for De Niro.
Yeah.
As well as, I think, like the legacy of that film, I would argue that's even more so than Goodfellas. Like
I would actually agree with that. Yeah,
you know, because a lot of his techniques were already there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's going back to 1973. Yeah. So, I mean, to sort of not underplay what it has and what Goodfellas has done, the accomplishment he made there as I think it was his second feature film. Mm-hmm. You know, it really, really was fantastic, and there's so many great characters, and it's a different side of, you know, the gangster sort of life. It's you know, very low on the totem pole, as opposed to some of the grander works, and it's a really nice view of the people, you know, the bottom feeders nearly at it.
It's a long time since I've seen it. I think I might have seen it one night in Film 4, and it's just what I love about it, and even the same with Goodfellas, as you said, like it was all there, the roughness of it and the edginess of it, and I mean it's not made, and I don't think Scorsese ever would really be that type of director, but it's not really made for a mainstream audience. I mean, I would say maybe his most mainstream film is the likes of something like Hugo or something like that.
Even Shutter Island.
Yeah, it's not. Well, even Shutter Island, whether you like it or not, it's still got a bit of an edge to it, and I mean. But it's not made. I don't think when he always tries to make a film, he tries to. That sounds a silly thing to say. When he makes a film, he always tries to make a film. He tries to do something with that film. Well, I think there's so many directors out there who'll just go like slot A into slot B and just move away, and that's their film done. I think he always brings something to it. But that's just me, maybe just.
I absolutely love Mean Streets. It's one of my favorites. I think it's one of Scorsese's best as well. I think it's super, super good. I think it's his first masterpiece. And no, Jim, you should definitely rewatch it. I mean, check it out. Plus, what you were saying is like it's much rougher on the edges. It's not the sleek, polished thing that Goodfellas is. But again, that was a lot of the early 1970s cinema as well, like Freakin', the French Connection, that kind of thing. But there's so much. I mean, it's one of to appreciate in this film, but I think it's probably Scorsese's most personal film as well, because it was a film that he made in response to those were the actual streets he grew up in. That was his childhood. That's what he knew. And his father was actually a kind of a hoodlum that the likes of which are depicted in the film. And you could just see that he poured his heart into making this film. And the fact that it's so accomplished, and he was so young at the time as well when he made it. And it just solidified everything that you now associate with Scorsese in that one film. I think it's fabulous.
Indeed. I would not disagree with any of that. Moving on, of course, the ones I've got here, of course, is Gangs of New York.
What about Casino?
Oh yeah, Casino. Yes, apologies.
It's hard to believe that it's 1990, that it's as late in his sort of career as that. It's again the partnership, the sort of golden goose that has laid so many eggs for both De Niro and Scorsese, and I don't love it.
I don't love it at all.
You know, I don't.
I don't hate it. I don't love it, and I think it was too much. It was too similar in some respects to Goodfellas.
Yeah,
it
it's
was
just
kind of
Goodfellas done in a casino,
and it was kind of like as if kind of going, well, everyone really liked Goodfellas. Let's redo that, but we'll get Sharon Stone in.
Yeah.
Joe Pesci's brilliant in Casino, and he does come in terms of grisly ends. If he came to a bad end in Goodfellas, he comes to quite possibly the nastiest death I think I've still possibly seen the long time with the buried alive sequence. Him and his brother, I think, just are. I can't remember. There's two of them just get in the field, and they just it's the bit where they just cut to them on the ground, and they're throwing the dirt over them, and you can't recognize them. They've just been battered that badly. But Sharon Stone is brilliant in Casino.
Oh, it's made for her.
Yes, she just plays
an ex-prostitute.
She just plays that kind of femme fatale kind of. I can't remember. Is it Ginger? Her character is.
Yeah, Ginger.
Yeah, Ginger. Her character is. She's just excellent in that film.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm not a massive Casino. It's a bit of a that's grand.
Yeah, if I had Casino and Goodfellas in my hand, both on DVD, I'd watch Goodfellas every time.
Twice.
Yeah. Again, it's like what we talked about with The Godfather. I kind of have to be in the mood to watch Casino, if that makes sense. Or I will go to a film screen. They're showing Casino. I might go see it in the film. And that means you have to sit and watch it. But if it's on TV, it's just too easy to maybe have an ad break and then comes up, flick. Yeah, let's throw on another episode of Family Guy. We'll move on then. Of course, we've got the next one. Of course, one would be Gangs of New York. Has fans?
Neil made a face, and I agree with that face.
Some people like it, some people don't like it. I think it's a terribly flawed film, but it does have a great centre performance by Daniel Day-Lewis.
I feel like I need to revisit Gangs of New York. I watched it a long, long time ago, and I remember being a little bit bored by it.
It's nearly 3 hours. It's 2 hours 40.
It was kind of depicted as this epic thing, and it really, for me, at that time wasn't. Now, that's a lot of years ago. Did it come out, 2000?
2006. 2002.
2002. Yeah. So I watched it very shortly after it came out, and it didn't quite connect with me. I might go back and revisit it. But and again, it's one of those things, like we're talking about the Public Enemies thing. It's like Daniel Day-Lewis, tick, Leonardo DiCaprio, tick, Martin Scorsese.
Well,
tick.
this is the thing. Do you think that would have been a ticket? Because, I mean, I might be wrong here, but was that DiCaprio's first work with Scorsese? And then, of course, he went on to the Aviator, and then did The Wolf of Wall Street.
Shutter Island.
Shutter Island as well, of course. Because I think that was like he was kind of maybe coming out of, because you will know this because you could pop up Film Club screen this. Like, when was Titanic? 97?
No, 98. No, 98. 2 sec. No, I thought it was 98.
So I mean, he was still kind of very much, because I think there's a problem.
That and Romeo.
There was that.
Romeo and Juliet.
I think he was still seen as the pretty boy, and I think it's a problem with I think Leonardo DiCaprio was a fantastic actor.
Completely agree.
There was that film, and then around the same time there was The Beach, which I have a soft spot for. I know a lot of people don't like it.
Agree.
I have a soft spot for, and I think people could not see Leonardo DiCaprio as like that kind of role when it's like, you're the pretty boy. You are like, your job is to look beautiful. You're like Mr. Calvin Klein. And I think
sorry, don't cut across you, but speaking of beautiful, isn't Cameron Diaz in?
Yes, but she's not very beautiful in this film as well.
And she's not very good.
Yeah.
But I will say she's not very good.
Very ropey accent, hasn't she?
She's not very good, and she does have a ropey accent. I think
Bagara.
She might possibly, I think, get nude. I think, but I might be wrong. But
No,
is she Ginger in that film as well?
Yeah, she does.
She's always wearing red.
Because she had kind of, I think that was her, because of course, Cameron Diaz, you think of a beautiful actress, but she had done like being John Malkovich, where she's completely on Cameron Diaz-y. And I might have invented a word there, to Cameron Diaz-y. I forget that. But I haven't watched it in a while. I like the idea of what Scorsese was trying to do in that film. Was he was trying to show the people that built New York. And of course, that last scene, which some people groaned at, where it kind of shows the Twin Towers, and it was, of course, shot after the Twin Towers had been destroyed. And that was his whole idea, that it wanted to be a film about the people that built New York, that not necessarily a film that wanted to destroy it. And like, you've got a lot of good. You've got like Liam Neeson in there, I think, is a small role. He's as Irish. And I think it's a film that, I don't know, I have to rewatch it, and it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I liked it, but I wouldn't overly go, if you had to see a Scorsese film. I know there's parts of it that I really like, but nah.
Yeah, that's the fact that none of us have seen it in a long while.
Yeah. But Daniel Day-Lewis is amazing in that role.
I watched it about a year ago. Okay. And again, you watch it for Daniel Day-Lewis. I mean, to be honest,
he's terrifying, isn't it? The Butcher or something?
The Butcher. And I mean, he is. There's some great scenes, and you get into sort of his method, sort of acting, and the fact that he went and learned how to become a butcher. Yeah. In that whole sort of, and didn't talk to his wife, and came in smelling meat all the time, and you do, whenever you compare him, and I think maybe that's why Cameron Diaz gets such a bad sort of is that she has to act opposite him and be believable, and it just doesn't work. It is very long. I'm in the same. I watched it, however many years ago, and found myself getting really bored. And I came and I revisited it, and there's some really nice set pieces in it and some really nice scenes. But as a film, it is sort of intrinsically flawed in a way that I can't really talk about most Martin Scorsese films. It's so long. Yeah, it's so overdrawn. And
I think up until The Wolf of Wall Street, I think it might have been his longest film.
Yeah,
possibly.
Right.
And even then, I know we're jumping to The Wolf of Wall Street. I think Scorsese wanted it to be a 4-hour. He reluctantly cut it down to 3 hours. The last one that I've got here is the Departed, and I think it's, of course, the reason why I've got it here is because this is the film that Scorsese finally won an Oscar for, when it was basically, let's give it to him before he dies type of thing.
Yeah.
I do like The Departed. Again, it's a film I've watched it a couple of times. I love it's maybe not the main characters, but it's the like of Mark Wahlberg. Mm-hmm. I love Mark Wahlberg. Every second word is an expletive. Expletives are used as punctuation throughout this. But you've got I'm just looking through. I've got it written down here. You've got a great cast. You've got Jack Nicholson, DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg, Martin Sheen, Alec Baldwin. That is a cast.
Yeah,
that is up there with Glengarry Glen Ross for me in terms of cast listing. And everybody, like Martin Sheen's great in that film. Jack Nicholson just chews the scenery. He's just like, he does and he doesn't. I mean, I would say he maybe even surpasses even any of his Jack Nicholson kind of performances. He outdoes himself. I just love that. Like the whole thing about the rat. It's like he kind of goes, there's a bit where he kind of goes,
that's wonderful.
Yeah, like you're just like a rat. And you've got then again talking about when people maybe couldn't take DiCaprio seriously with Gangs of New York. You've got Matt Damon. Matt Damon, who around that time was still was the Team America Matt Damon type of person, and you're gonna go, hang on, Matt Damon's a good actor, and he holds his own. I love DiCaprio's journey in that.
Yeah,
of course, without Departed, I do prefer Internal Affairs, which of course it was based on.
Yeah,
it's a better film. And I think it's sad that of all, we've mentioned a few films. I'm sure we've mentioned Raging Bull, we've mentioned Mean Streets,
Taxi
Driver, sorry.
King of Comedy.
King of Comedy is a great film. It's the overlooked, not so much Scorsese film, but it's the overlooked De Niro film so often with people. But I mean, when you kind of think of the great films he's made, you kind of go, it's The Departed, which is a good film. But
it's nowhere near as good as Taxi Driver or Raging Bull or any of those classics. No. The fact that he won an Oscar for that is exactly what you said.
It was a lifetime achievement Oscar.
Exactly, yeah. We should have given it to him for Taxi Driver. We should have given him the full list. We're going to try and make it up by giving it to him now.
Yeah. Anything else, guys, you want to say about The Departed?
Just watch Goodfellas instead.
Yeah. I do love the Simpsons parody of the reference to Departed. It's kind of forget what episode it is, but it's just it just kind of takes all the subtlety out of that final scene where you've got City Hall and you've got the rat running across.
Oh, right.
And kind of Ralph kind of comes up and kind of go, Ralph points out what they're trying to say and you're kind of going, yeah, okay, Simpsons are quite genius. Then lastly, gents, but just because I just wanted to mention this, of course, was Wolf of Wall Street. A lot of comparisons between it and Goodfellas. Same kind of narration, same kind of style, same kind of unredemptive central protagonist, of course, with Jordan Belfort, who doesn't really regret anything that he's done. In fact, he kind of sees now that he would see himself as a hero. Of course, that's, of course, Jordan Belfort's ego. But like Henry Hill, like Wolf of Wall Street, I kind of think it is kind of Scorsese kind of taking that mobster idea from Goodfellas and saying, these guys are the mobsters, the gangsters of the new year, of the noughties.
Yeah. They are the guys who rise from nothing and do the penny coupon skit to get themselves into Wall Street and on. It's again, we've talked about before, it's the American dream. You start off with nothing and you work your way up and then you just go buck daft. In the case of Wolf of Wall Street, you just buy boats and coke and throw police off your boat and just go, get out. Yeah. That type of thing. It's great. I'm a big fan of it. Out of all the ones we kind of talked about, now I haven't seen Mean Streets. That's my only caveat on this. But out of all the ones we've talked about, Goodfellas and Wolf of Wall Street are the two that I have the most love for, I think.
I do like. I mean, you mentioned that Goodfellas zips along at a 2.5 hour pace. Wolf of Wall Street zips along at when you realise you've been in for 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe.
I came out of Wolf of Wall Street and thought that's like this generation's Goodfellas
Yeah.
in a way because of, like you said, the kind of switch of who are the gangsters now.
Yeah.
Like for a generation coming out, if you were 18 going into Wolf of Wall Street, that is your Goodfellas in many ways, I think, and Paris thought that anybody in Hollywood ever goes, do you know what we should remake? Have you ever seen Goodfellas? And a whole generation get a busted remake version of that.
Yeah, it'll happen.
They don't need that because they have the Wolf of Wall Street. They're fine. Leave it.
It could, isn't it? Rob Reiner, isn't he in that film as well? He's like their kind of the fixer.
The guy who's on the phone,
I love Rob Reiner in this film. Like, I mean,
that's one of the things about Wolf of Wall Street. It's really funny as well.
Yeah.
But I really like Wolf of Wall Street. I think it's very, very good. I don't think it's as good as Goodfellas, but I think it's still very good. But
the only thing, my problem is, I never thought as a redheaded male, I was like, there's too much boobage. There's too much too much sex in it. And I mean, like when you're kind of going. I was struggling to get it from 4 hours to 3. It's like, surely, like, there's a whole scene, although I do love it, is that his, Jordan's stag do. When they're going on the plane, you're like kind of going, I've never played. That must be what it feels like to go first class. They definitely don't get that type of service in economy. Then you just kind of show, like, anything that the Hangover guys can do, like this, the destruction. And I think it's at Vegas they go to, and they completely destroy the suite that they're in.
Yeah, the film kind of treads very, very close to being exploitative and leering in that kind of sense. But I think a lot like Goodfellas, that's the point. I mean, when this came out, it was it was very hotly debated because a lot of people were condemning it, again, for the exact same reason that we're condemning Goodfellas, about that possible, glamorizing violence, but this is glamorizing that lifestyle. But I think the point of Wolf of Wall Street, the reason that when you exit that movie, the thing that I was felt, and a lot of people I went with it felt afterwards, is just how angry it made them feel. And just that these people do all this, is bring the world's economy to its absolute knees, and just before it's about to deliver the death blow, they just go, you know what, we'll slap them on the wrist and say, just don't do it again. And then Jordan Belfort gets a book deal, he gets a movie made after him, he gets a cameo in the film, and all this kind of thing.
Just before the credits.
Are you serious? It's exactly the same thing that happens to Henry Hill at the end. You think he has the nerve to complain about this lifestyle, and he is... And I think that's very intentional. And a lot of people say, well, wouldn't many people see this and think, I want to be like that, I want to live like that? But I think if you actually think like that, then I think you've completely misread the film.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree, because I mean, there is that kind of moment where he kind of talks about, it's been a while since I've seen it, where he kind of has that moment, isn't it the moment with God, where they're out in the boat. The boat.
I think they're about to die.
And you're kind of going, that's, it's again, it reminds me of Henry Hill. It's that kind of going, it's just desperation. I mean, any other circumstances, you would not, I mean, if you never get caught, anything like that, you would still be doing what you're doing. You would never turn around and say, I have seen the error of my ways, here's all my money back. And the other good thing about that film, of course, is Margot Robbie. Who, just kind of, that was when I was introduced to Margot Robbie. And, and the line, "What is it, Daddy?" I'm not even doing impersonation, because I don't think you could. I don't think you could. You couldn't take it, Jack. I don't think we'll agree, and I actually really like that for a podcast. It's hard to, as you said, it is Sophie's choice, Jack. Like choosing between which of the two, the Goodfellas.
Which I think Goodfellas, which mood am I in? Yeah, I think it comes in that.
Well, that's a key question. Then what mood do you have to be in then to watch either or?
I think I don't know. What is these questions?
Just did you mention it? Just kind of mentioned I have to be in the mood. Like, I mean, if you're in an aggressive mood, like if you're aggressive, you had a really bad day. What are you going to go watch?
It's like,
well, let's
are you in the mood for like really, really, really high end fine dining restaurant, or are you in the mood for like a really, really nice homely meal? It's like I don't know.
But what if you want to be? What if you want a Big Mac?
You then go for The Departed.
Okay. I like what you did there. Okay, so gentlemen,
Can I just throw in a little shameless plug though? I wrote about Goodfellas on the blog. One of my things, Jack McFadden at WordPress.com. That if you want to read about it more, then please do.
No problem. We will send me the link and I will retweet it. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much for taking part in the show. So thank you very much, Jack. Thank you very much, James.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Cheers.
We'll be back again next week. All right, bye.
This has been We Need to Talk About Movies. Thanks for listening. For more information, visit banterflix.com. See you next time.